Before we start on the topic of inclusive culture and its paradoxes, a little background which Ankita did not give so far was, so I live in I'm settled in Bangalore and I live with a family which is diverse as well. I have a daughter, 10-year-old. I have a pet who's 3 months old. I have a husband who's also into IT industry and a mother-in-law who's 80-year-old. So that is uh, an extended introduction of myself. Now, with that, before we go into the topic, what are my expectations from the webinar? Generally, I ask the participants for their expectations. This time, I'm doing it the other way around. I expect that we'll have a participative audience because of which I'll have a lot of takeaway insights and experiences. So I'll enrich my knowledge. And what I expect all of us who joined today, taking their time out, is that we'll go back with a little more awareness on this topic, a raised consciousness, a greater appreciation of human differences, and lastly, but very important individually, we all should have a buy-in to do our bit to create an inclusive culture. So on that note, I'll begin. I love poems. So to set the context of this session, let me read out a very small poem for all of us, and then we'll go forward. This is actually from the Crayon Box That Talked. We'll end it on a similar note. We'll circle back, but by Shane Dirol. Wouldn't it be terrible? Wouldn't it be sad? Just one single color was the color that we had. If everything was purple or red or blue or green, if yellow, pink, or orange was all that could be seen, could you just imagine how dull the world would be if just one single color was all we got to see? A very simple kindergarten poem, but it talks about diversity and its importance and how depressing it would be if we did not have diversity of all the forms that exist. On that note, let us quickly do an exercise of sorts. Now, to understand inclusion, we have to understand diversity because that's the foundation, right? Now, I have put across 5 pictures here. If in the chat box, we can share which of these pictures we think is most diverse and why. And we can also write down which of these pictures we think is least diverse, and again, why do we think so? Can we? I'll give a minute's pause. I'll switch to my chat window and let us see if we have some responses.
Okay.
Anyone wants to give a shot? Least diverse is 1 and 5. Most diverse is 2, 3, 4. Can we also please put in some answers why we think when we see this visibly, why we think 2, 3, 4 are most diverse and 1 and 5 is least diverse? What are the parameters that we are bringing onto our decision? Two is culturally diverse, language, age groups, abilities. Fantastic. The audio is not clear. Nandini, is it clear for everyone else? I just tried and I came closer to. Okay, fourth is also because of physical ability. Fantastic. Great. Nandini, I hope the audio is better now. We did a multiple set of testing. Least diverse is 1 and 5. And why is 1 and 5 least diverse, Antara, or anyone who's given a similar response? Same religious practices. Fantastic, Amrita. Thank you. Same color, homogeneous. Wow, that's awesome. So I think the audience, it's beautiful to address an audience which has the basis right. Fourth is the most diverse because I see a lot of diversity, but still not complete. Great, great, Ankita. Okay, now on that note, fantastic answers. There's no right and wrong really. But why I put this exercise is for us to understand that what we perceive as diverse, whatever we've said, they are diverse, but most diversities are not visible. When we are talking about the entire spectrum of diversity, on the left is the iceberg model, the famous iceberg model, which we use for many of the other things as well, culture and stuff. The waterline of visibility is very limited. What we see in diversity is the skin color, gender, race, age. Some of the other factors could be made visible. They are on the borderline, like nationality based on the way we dress or we speak. Similarly, religion and all. But many of the diversities are under this waterline of visibility. Be it our sexual orientation, thinking styles, um, different languages or beliefs. So there is so much more to diversity that we talk about. And while we are on this slide, I would also like to make a point. Physical ability, for example, in our minds, physical ability is something very visible. But it's good to know that many of the physical abilities are also not visible. For example, a person might be diabetic or might have an HIV or AIDS. Those are also a part of physical ability diversity, but they're not visible in nature. So while there are so many types of diversity that we see, and most of them are not visible, but having said that, diversity is a reality and it is here to stay, right? Especially with the globalization and shrinking of the world, we are getting, the world is getting smaller, but the diversity is increasing. So diversity is a reality. The question to ask after this is diversity alone enough? So diversity is the reality. There are so many types of diversity. Is diversity alone enough? The answer is no, because diversity in itself by default, it is a reality, it will exist. But if diversity is a reality, inclusion is a work in progress. And that is what this whole topic is about. There are a lot of analogies and that are given to understand the connection between diversity and inclusion. In DNI space, one of the famous one is if diversity is being invited to a party, inclusion is being asked to dance. I have put across some more ones for us to really understand this gist, because this forms the foundation. If diversity is the differences, inclusion is the ability to leverage the differences. If diversity is having a seat at the table, that is not enough. Inclusion is having a voice that is heard. If diversity is the mix, inclusion is getting the mix to work well together. So what we are saying in summary is, if diversity is the what and who, inclusion is the how. So inclusion is what makes diversity work. So when we talk about these terms interchangeably many a times, do keep this in mind that we're really talking about inclusion. And the organizations cannot just be okay with having diversity and not doing anything about inclusion of that diversity. Okay, Ankita, just sorry, I'm taking a pause. I have my full screen on, so I cannot see the chat windows intermittently. If there is anything that you want me to stop, please feel free to interrupt.
Yeah, sure. So when you ask a question, if people start answering, I'll say it back to you. Shouldn't be a problem.
Sure. No, that I'll switch the window. But in any case, if people are losing out on my voice or any of that,
Yeah.
anyway,
I will let you know.
thank you. Thank you, Ankita. So now that we know what is the connection between diversity and inclusion, what makes inclusion so important? At an individual level, at a very core level, each one of us needs to feel respected, belonged, and empowered. That is a basic need. We all really want this, right? I don't see anybody who would not have these needs. So inclusion is important at an individual level. When we get into groups and we are social animals, when we talk about organizations, nowadays that's a business need. From an organization perspective, it brings in diverse talents and perspectives, which helps in better decision making. Statistically, and the researchers say that organizations which are more into diversity and inclusion have 87% more better decision making capacities. And obviously, there are loads of positives that come with it. It at an individual level in an organization, employees' morale is boosted, you get employee loyalty and retention, and eventually in business growth. And when we really take it at a societal level, what would inclusion do? when individuals will feel belong. It'll build harmony. We'll have better reforms. We would have more growth and development because we're really inclusive as a society, and it also harbors a safe future for our next generations. So that is why inclusion is extremely important at all levels, and we all can contribute to this. We'll see that in subsequent slides. We'll again take a pause here, and if we can have again a set of interactive views in the chat window and share our experiences when we did not feel included individually, be it personally in an organization while growing up. I have my confessions written down as well. For example, I've been brought up in a small town with in a joint North Indian family. So I've been I was wired in a certain way. I had my own stereotypes, biases, all of that, prejudices that came with it. And during all of that growing up, I had my share where uh, I did not include many a time subconsciously, and I did not feel included. Some of my confessions, as simple as my classmates did not befriend me because I was not popular in school. I was not considered for fashion shows in college because I was short, and that stays with me individually, right? Why could I not be in fashion shows? I did not get marriage proposals. This is it hard, especially in my growing up days, because I had dark complexion, and in a North Indian family, it is a big taboo. So not being fair. I was officially, I mean, in organization, I was not considered for promotion because I was pregnant. Even now, while all of this was in past, I'm still not heard. I sense that I'm not heard in meetings because I'm a woman. Having said all of this, I still feel very privileged because when we see the whole spectrum of diversity and when we see what the world is facing in terms of racism or not being included in so many factors, this still seems small, but still had a big impact on me individually, right? Do we have something? So when I was in Delhi in first job, even though people know I don't know Punjabi, they used to speak in office. So yeah, subconsciously, how true, Murli, how true, and these things they stick with us. They have a huge impact on how we grow or not grow, how our personalities shape up, right? So thanks for bringing that up. We culturally, or we are not language inclusive many a times, and that is not an inclusive environment. Anybody else who wants to share anything about when they did not feel included, even if they are similar points to what I've written, if you want to share? Short woman in a world full of so-called intellectual men, being a returnee mom. So I see women coming up. Murli, thanks for sharing your experience as well. I think there are so many ways where we don't feel included because not included in planning sessions, somebody's written, was judged with less dedication. Body shaming for being slim, that's very unfortunate. But these are all so common instances that they've become norm for us, right? So an opposite view of what Murli said. So somebody from North comes to Bengaluru and people use regional languages. People are not inclusive and mindful. Vitiligo discrimination, how important. I mean, I'm sharing, I'm being very candid and very personal experiences because this is all about getting to know each other, learn from each other. My daughter has vitiligo. When we came to know, we were shattered, but but that is how it is, and we have to live with it, and that is why the importance of inclusive culture is even more important. Harshad says, I worked in a group of women majority, and there was groupism, and I was left on gender bias. How important. These are things we hardly hear. When we talk about gender bias, it's mostly the other way around. But with the changing world, it is so important to understand that even men face similar issues. So yeah, so many of I'm sure each one of us have so many such instances, small, big, where we do not feel included. Men face similar issues definitely. How do we feel when we are not included? Definitely, all things that I have written as my confessions, it had a big impact on my personality during those times. How much I reach out to people, I felt dejected. Sometimes it goes till depression, especially the marriage proposal thing, for example. From a professional point, you are not motivated enough to work. And so many more such feelings, I'm sure that comes with it. The responses are still pouring in. Fantastic. So yeah, how we recognize, how we include how we be inclusive in a group, very very important. All of these. So let us take another viewpoint, and if you can write down our views of are there instances, this might take a little more thinking. The first one comes naturally. When we did not include others consciously or not, are there instances that you can think where you have not been inclusive about others? As I said, the way I was being brought up, I had a lot of wiring and prejudices within me. And it is a journey I've taken over these years. And my school friends say I'm a completely different person. So each of us have to make a conscious effort. I'll share some of my complexions. Now, this is very strange, but this is how it happens, I'm sure, to many of us. When I was young, when I was with my parents, the way I was wired in my family is fair complexion is important. I should have stood up, against that distinction, that exclusion. But what in turn my psyche became is somehow I wanted to be friends only with those who were fair in complexion because I thought if I can't have one, at least being associated with them would do me good. Long ago, this is all in past because I definitely am not biased towards any of this anymore. But I thought purely of people who ate non-vegetarian food. And why this is important is we all have a role to play as parents as well. We'll bring that thing up subsequently also. I gossiped about people who engaged in infidelity or were homosexuals. It was such a no. So we are so wired in such a certain way that we are very strong in our opinions. We are very closed on how we perceive the world and the different groups and diversities. Professionally also I realized now after I attended many trainings and over my experiences. Earlier when I used to take interview or hire people for my teams, I tended to hire them when they had same work ethics or they were replica of me. So I would just gel in the interview and I would take pride that I know that yeah, this is the person because it just strikes. So if I like somebody who should be extremely presentable with iron shorts, I judge them if they were not, and I might have rejected on that note, some of the people. So I'm guilty to all of this. And even now, while my fear of not inclusion has reduced considerably, there is always something that we can improve further. I still have my opinions about people who are not planners. I'm a planner, so people who just land up in meetings unprepared, I do judge them, but I'm trying to come out of that as well because it's important we understand why a person is way the person is. I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but when we talk about inclusion, we'll talk about paradoxes as well, and then we'll understand this polarization better. How much they have felt when any of this happens. So what we are trying to draw a point is it's very very important to be mindful of our actions. Right? Um, okay. Some confession. I wanted always someone who's very organized and pro in communication. Thank you, Mona, for sharing that. I would not hire someone who could not respect country, people not in the room, and would be willing to lie thinking the result is justified. Interesting. We all do that, right? And I'm not saying that, after this webinar, suddenly we all stop, being biased, but there is a conscious effort and it is a constant journey that we all have to take. Thank you for your responses. Going back. So now it comes to a point, we've discussed some of these. What makes inclusion so difficult? We realize that inclusion is important. We also touched upon the first major factor, what is a hindrance or a bottleneck to inclusion is the cultural and societal setup. It is so deep rooted, the way we are wired, the way we are brought up, that it creates stereotypes, it creates unconscious bias within us. There are so many types of biases that exist without even we knowing that we are getting biased. And it also results in social stigmas and why we do not stand up and be inclusive. Sometimes it's a lot to do with social stigmas why we do not mm, take actions towards inclusion. Also, an important aspect which hinder inclusion or makes it difficult for that matter is the changing times. It is not that we have 100 sets of diverse groups and we know that, that is all that is. With the globalization and technology advancement, the dynamics are changing. The more we are interacting across the globe, the set of diverse people, that dynamic is changing, and that makes it furthermore difficult to keep adapting and changing to the inclusion reforms or policies that we are drafting. While these two are more external factors, there are two very important individual factors which we can work upon. One is lack of awareness. Now, lack of awareness itself is a biggest resistance, because then if we are not aware, our mind is not open to accept or to change. We are not very empathetic towards diversity, and that's why inclusion doesn't come. And even if we are aware, another very important point to make a difference is uh, we have to prioritize. So lack of prioritization results in inadequate diversity. It will just exist by default, so it becomes optional. And also, we'll not take adequate actions to address the issues that we know exist. We are aware of. So these are four important aspects we all have to keep in mind when we take any actions at an individual or at an organization level. Now, this is one of the titles that I came up with. When we talk about challenges of inclusion, this is a very important point when we are working on uh, inclusion in an organization. Inherently, inclusion is paradoxical in nature. What that means is when you're trying to be inclusive of multiple groups, diverse groups, there would be polarized views, and these polarized views would create challenges and tensions. What are these paradoxes that we are talking about? There are three primary paradoxes. One is self-expression and identity. What that means is, does inclusion mean that I belong to a larger group and we all try and be the same? Or is inclusion about we belong to, we also respect our differences, and we we respect and we agree to the differences? Second viewpoint or the paradox is in the boundaries and norms. Some say that for us to understand inclusion and whether we are in that container of inclusion, it is very important that we very well define the boundaries of inclusion so that we know whether we are a part of that group or not. And another form is that you can never have a very well defined structure of inclusion based on the dynamic changes, and we have to be flexible and very and you to adapt and change. Third paradox is on safety and comfort. So one, giving comfort and having it my way versus multiple groups, they come together, they're open to change, even if it means a discomfort and a change to certain aspects of yourself, right? Now, this is actually a complex topic if you really think about it, but the point to note here is the polarizing view will exist. The solution is, whenever there are polarized ideas, and if we are working towards a solution to this inclusion, we have to consider both and perspective, and instead of either or. The moment we consider either or perspective, we are excluding a set of people. I'll uh, I'll give two examples. One in our organization talk of 30 we started seeing employee dissatisfaction around a year ago, where an employee survey came millennial organization. They don't want the dress code to be extremely formal. So so we heard that, and earlier we had Monday to Thursday very formal dress code, and Friday was the casual. That we are in, and so we hire fresh out of college, and they don't know how to globally represent themselves and how do they get used to it. And there was this another viewpoint where millennials said, how do we be comfortable working for more than 8 hours, 10 hours in extremely formal dress code? So what we did finally, and we rolled out last year, this policy was we made a total shift. So we understood the dynamics and the rationale behind the two viewpoints. And what we did is now Tuesday to Friday is casual dress code, and Monday is one day where we encourage employees, don't strictly reinforce, but there are very few non-negotiable no-nos. But on Monday you have to wear formal dress code, so that the rationale that people get used to the global dress code, and they have it in their wardrobe. That was one example on paradoxical or polarized view. Another one is so we talk a lot about diverse others that but we also talk about building a framework. We say this is the core values. So do we bring abide by that set of rules? But while this seems like polarized idea, to me it's actually not if we dig deep. So it's not that when we do diverse hiring, we don't get people from different physical abilities, or we don't get people from different sexual orientation or gender. But there are some non-negotiable core values, which as humans or as professionals, we want that. So the point I'm trying to make is, if as an HR or in your organization, you're doing any policy changes or reforms on building inclusive culture, keep in mind that inclusion is inherently paradoxical, and always apply an and approach instead of an or approach. It'll yield more inclusive outcomes and policies. Right. Ankita, let me know if I'm going too fast. That was a disclaimer I wanted to put at the start, because I generally go very fast.
No. I think you are doing a healthy mix of data and stories as well. So I think that's coming up well together.
Thank you. Thank you. If anybody feels that, I'm going a little fast, we can slow down. But that's so much to cover that I think my pace just speeds up. Anyway, now, um, now that we understand diversity, inclusion, the challenges, the paradoxes of it, the next important thing to understand before we go into how do we foster an inclusive culture is to understand there are different levels of inclusion. Now, we need to understand as individuals or as an organization, where do we stand at these levels. Only then it becomes very achievable and realistic on what steps we take to move to the next level. You can't suddenly build a culture of inclusion overnight, or in 2 weeks. If your organization is at an invisible level, you have to be patient, and it will take time. Now, I'll quickly explain the 5 layers. When we say invisible, it is almost like non-existing. So what happens is diversity would be there in the organization, but individuals who will face the discrimination, they are left on their own to deal with its negative impacts without support from their colleagues or the organization. That is the invisible nature. The minimal is where organizations do something very basic. So if an important client comes back and says that this is not right and you have to fix this, so we do that. Or an employee survey, something is an outlier and we really have to do that bit of change, we tweak that, and we are happy with that. And we do some basic statistics for gender diversity, and we use it as a marketing exercise. So that there is a minimal effort, and it is inconsistent and ad hoc. Third is intentional inclusion. This is a good start point. This is where actually inclusion start, is what I feel, where where there is a set of people, a percentage of your organization, uh, has a commitment that we must do this in future. There might be practical challenges or priorities, but they have started making verbal commitments. They have a vision statement. They've started thinking, taking baby steps and reforming the policies and processes. One of the examples, a lot of examples I thought I'll put in further slides, but they come to my mind, I think it's only relevant. When I say baby steps, as simple as a few years ago, what we did, all our baseline policy and procedure documents where we had man days written, we changed it to person days. Sounds like a very small change, but it is important to take these baby steps. So why have man days and not person days? Very important to be inclusive and gender neutral in our communication. The fourth stage are the responsible organizations which make D&I their priority. It is in their strategy and they do diversity by design. I'll park this diversity by design. We'll take some examples in the upcoming slides. And the last is when you do this multiple times, when you've reached a breadth and you've done a lot of things to foster inclusive culture, which we'll see, then it automatically, after all the efforts and the initiatives, it gets woven into the organization core values and the mindset of employees, and the organization is consciously trying to be sustainable for future diversity as well. So there is a constant conscious effort of improvement. So these are the 5 levels of inclusion that we must understand. Now, I'm almost halfway through the presentation, and now this slide I personally feel is very important, and this should hit hard to all of us. And I hope we have some takeaways at an individual level. So let us do a quick recap. We understood what diversity is, how inclusion makes diversity work. We have also seen that why is inclusion important individually, as an organization, as a society. We also saw what are the challenges we face, what are the paradoxes, and we saw the 5 levels of inclusion. Now, some random questions that I've put here, you can share your views on this in the chat window, but it's more for you to take a pause and think on each of these questions. That might help you be aware as an individual or as an organization, which level of inclusion are we in, right? And then we'll move on to the real 2 slides where we talk about how to foster inclusive culture. From an organization perspective, certain questions. As an individual, do you know, or as an HR, do you have a D&I policy? In whichever format, it might not be an independent policy, it might be a part of some other policy, but does your organization have policy which mentions inclusion? What is the diversity ratio in my organization? Do you know? And what are the parameters that it is measured on? Is it only gender diversity? Men versus women is all that we measure? Do we go to some more diversity parameters like generation, like global statistics on the levels we are in? So do we know that? Third thing, have I read ever about or attended a training in my organization or individually on unconscious bias? What do I know about what is unconscious bias? How many types of unconscious bias exist? Now, the next set of questions are more individual and personal. Are we not guilty for some of these things, and guilty for not being a part of some of these things? Do I prefer hanging out with people speaking my language and similar age groups? In offices, who are our lunch groups? Do we not actively seek for people who speak our own language, who are our age groups, and who just connect naturally? Do I have, I'm not sure if I should be using gay friends. I am learning this well, but so do I have friends with different sexual orientation or different physical abilities? We might have this. Nowadays, it's such a buzzword that people don't mind having diverse friends and then think about themselves as cool. But was there a conscious effort that we reach out to people, diverse people? Do I make jokes or stop people from making jokes casually on gender, race, etc.? Now this is big for me because as a woman, when I casually hear people making jokes on gender, I get very worked up. And obviously, my friends say that why are we being so serious in life? Because all these small things have a big impact on the mindset and society as a whole. The challenge which we talked about of inclusion, where the culture and the stereotypes are so deep rooted, everything adds. So, for example, when we are a group of girls and even a girl addresses hi guys, I take offense. And then my friends are, why are you being so serious? It's just a term. But I say, I know it sounds very trivial, but I want to be conscious. Do we call a group of guys as hi girls? No. So I'm not saying that, not really want to be women centric, but what I'm saying is we have to be mindful when we casually forward jokes on WhatsApp. What you might be aware of it, you might be doing it in a very casual term, but that it could have an impact in the longer run on people who are at the receiving end. So what pleasure does it give? Have very neutral humor, right? You anyway. Do I know what does LGBTQA plus stand for? You might have heard the term LGBT nowadays. It's a very, very commonly term used. But were we curious enough to go and Google what this is or what this is about? Very important to ask. I'll be very happy if most of us know this. Before I go to the next set of questions, I just see if we have something in the chat windows. Great, we do have some answers. Just a minute. Wow, there are a lot of responses. Sorry, I missed out on reading many of them. Okay, questions we'll take at the end, Antara. One would think that changing times make inclusion easier. Yes and a no. We'll park that question. Remind me. We'll discuss at the end of it. Okay, let me not really get into these details. We'll take time. Now, the last two questions I'm putting across, some people might find it very personal. So disclaimer, no offense intended. But many a times we are okay. Let the world change. Let the world be inclusive. Let my friends be inclusive. I'm okay with all of that. Don't bring it in my inner circle. Don't bring it in my family. They shudder at the thought of if their child lands up, coming up to them and saying that I'm a gay or a lesbian. Um, they say fine, your friend married a minority community. I'm fine, but I hope my child. So nowadays, I hear it a lot that um, that my child should be healthy, and I hope. So if it's a girl nowadays, the shift is that it's no longer I want a boy, but if it's a girl, I hope that she falls in love with a boy. Like seriously, and I'll take an example. One of my ex-colleagues, a senior leader, he was he's in Pune and he was in Bangalore, and we were catching up one day, and he's got a teenage daughter, and he was sharing with me with the assumption that I'll share his mind space because we're of same age, and he was saying, I cannot imagine this girl as she practical randomly Mondays. And he was really scared of it. He said, what are we really getting into? And then obviously I stood up and then I said, what's wrong with that? I would really like to meet your daughter when I come there. He got so taken aback, and then obviously on a lighter note, but he said that I'll not let my daughter meet you, you'll spoil her, corrupt her. And this is leaders that we're talking about who've been global, who've been around. So that is how deep rooted our prejudices are. So very, very important uh, we start from ourselves, from our innermost circle, before we go and talk about changing the society. So as I was saying, visual, how do we foster inclusive culture? Start small, start one step at a time. From your family, realize that people are different. They are the best version of what they could be at that current point. Try and understand the deep rooted reasons behind why people are the way they are, and that's the spice of life. So be the change, be more accepting, be more empathetic, listen to people. Second is diversify your network. Don't let diversity be by default. Make it a design. So reach out to people. How do you diversify your network? With technology and social media, it becomes much easier. You don't really have to go out taking a land. But join groups. So self-educate. Join groups which talks about all these different types of diversity. What people are doing to be more inclusive. Be a part of rallies. Be a guy. There is so much we can do in this space. Spread awareness. So if you're there, you're aware, don't just keep that to yourself. The way we forward silly jokes, spread awareness. If today you come to know anything which you did not know from this webinar, go and share the link of this recording, or anything which you go and Google, share with your friend. Don't be too afraid of what they'll think about if I'm an ally. Stand up for minority communities. That is the only way to bring a change. We can't be spectators and expect others to act. So very, very important. If I think we do these things at an individual level, automatically the society would change because we form this society. This is my last slide, like second last slide. How to foster inclusive culture in an organization. First and foremost, make it a priority. We saw in the challenges as well. So there has to be leadership involvement, but also don't just wait that it'll come from top down. At your level as an employee, as an HR, as a team lead, whatever you can, do it within the organization as well. Ensure diversity by design. Now, this is very interesting. I take an example. I was having a chat with one of my HR friends in another organization, and she very proudly told me that our gender diversity ratio is 38% or 39%, and it's a little above the market standards. So I said, fantastic. And then I got curious and I asked her as a logical question. So this 39%, how is the cross section of these women? She was talking about men to women gender ratio. And then she went back, she did not have that data. And then she said that I realized 90% of them are between the experience of 0 to 5 years. Then she got a little interested and she did this thing where she realized that it was not by design. That ratio also was achieved because they were a purely testing organization. It was a win-win. It just happened that many women wanted to be in testing roles and they became a part of the organization. And then she really went into it. Then I asked, what are the other diversity parameters that you measure? And then she said, this is about it. Are there something else? And then there can be so many more, right? So it's very important that you make diversity by design a priority in your talent acquisition teams. Create awareness. This is where it starts at an organization perspective to reach out to employees. A good starter is to make mandatory trainings on unconscious bias. That is a pointer. You can do a lot of awareness through posters, webinars, and so many more things that we can do to create awareness so that your employees know. Only then we get the buy-in, right? The next step is formulate policies and programs. We already spoke of some of the examples. Take simple steps. Ensure that all your policies are fair. They've considered all groups, diverse groups that are there in your organization, even from a future perspective. Implement relevant changes. What this means is as simple. Some of the things which we did in our organization when we started on this journey is what are your signages in your washrooms? If today your organization do not have uh, uh, specially able people, employees, or it does not have transgender, for example, you'll have washrooms which has men and women. How do you address inclusivity for future if you don't have it now? We have these screensavers which are like comic strips and all. So we also realized the more we got aware that how do we represent the pictures that we depict? Do we have all slim men and women? Do we have all fair, people in our pictures? So we changed that. Our CEO consciously, when he saw that, he's like, can we just bring more diverse set of things here? So as simple as that, but implement relevant changes. Lastly, measure and improve. many ways to measure. Some simple examples are in your employee satisfaction survey, make conscious effort to get feedback on how inclusive your employees are feeling, and see what is the graph, quarter on quarter or whatever, and have discussions and take actions accordingly. Understand also what is your diversity in different areas and what are their challenges, and then hear them out and come up with solutions. And lastly, if your organization is already there in this space on the journey, uh, don't just do it for your business, for your clients, for your profitability, but go beyond it and make it a part of your corporate social responsibility. A big section in ISO 2600 of CSR is diversity and inclusion. So reach out further if you've reached one of these stages that we talked about. Okay, thank you everyone for being with me. We started this webinar with a poem, if there were not many colors, if the whole world was one color, how it would be. This poem is an extension in some way. This is again a very famous poem, and I also teach kindergartens, and this is a good way to teach your young ones as well. So the gist of this poem, I'll not read out the entire poem. The gist is, there is a box of crayon that did not gel well with each other. They existed in the same box. And one important thing there is, the blue said that we are a bunch of crayons that doesn't get along. Something here is wrong. And then the poet brings the crayons together and starts coloring the crayon on a sheet of paper. And when the picture comes out, everybody realizes the importance of each other and how beautiful they are. And then the poem ends with a very important note that we are a box of crayons, each one of us unique, but when we get together, the picture is complete. So let us paint a beautiful canvas by celebrating our differences and realizing our commonalities. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Neha, for this amazing